A new dinosaur was just found in the Gobi Desert. A lizard species hidden for generations was finally confirmed in one of the most remote parts of Australia, and in Iran's scorching Lut Desert, a super unexpected animal comes to life after decades underground. In July 2024, paleontologists working in Mongolia's Gobi Desert announced the discovery of a brand new dinosaur called Duonicus sogbatari. This thing had massive claws, over 12 inches long, and somehow those claws still had their original keratin casing intact. That almost never happens. Usually you just get the fossilized bone, but this one had the actual outer sheath, which helped confirm just how sharp and curved they were. And even though it lived about 70 million years ago, parts of it were so well preserved that scientists could learn more about its muscles, joints, and how it moved. This was one of the most complete therizinosaur skeletons ever found in Asia. That's the family this one belongs to. The dinosaur was officially described in 2025. The team was led by Yoshisugu Kobayashi from Hokkaido University and a few paleontologists. According to them, this is one of the most complete and detailed dinosaurs of this type ever found in Asia. In June of 2024, scientists working with the indigenous Anangu people found a brand new lizard species hiding out in the desert of South Australia. It's called Leopholus apuja, and it belongs to a group of lizards known as rock skinks. But this one stood out right away because of its weird scale pattern and its DNA. The discovery was led by Jules Borkar from Monash University, and the team made it official after checking its genetics and comparing it with other species. Thing is, the indigenous people already knew about this lizard. They call it apuja, and they've known where it hangs out and what it does for generations. Without their help, the researchers probably wouldn't have even found it. This place is super remote and mostly uncharted, so the lizard had completely slipped under the radar until now. To the science community, that is. What really surprised researchers was how isolated the species is. Its genes show that it split off from other skinks a long time ago and just adapted to its own rocky little part of the desert. There's a shrimp that lives in one of the hottest places on Earth, and it only shows up when it rains. Yeah, I bet you weren't expecting to see a shrimp on this list. It's called Phallocryptus fahimi, and scientists officially named it in 2017 after finding it in the Lut Desert in Iran. This desert can hit temperatures of over 150 degrees Fahrenheit on the ground, so you'd think nothing would survive there, but these shrimp don't live out in the open. They exist as eggs buried deep in the dry salt flats, and they can stay dormant for years, maybe even decades. When it rains, the eggs hatch almost instantly. Within a few days, you've got tiny shrimp swimming around in puddles that didn't even exist a week ago. They grow up really fast, they lay more eggs, and then the puddles dry out and they vanish again. Dr. Hussein Rajeh, who helped identify the species, said it was like discovering a, quote, ghost species, because people had seen them pop up before, but no one had figured out exactly what they were. They're part of a group called fairy shrimp, which live in temporary desert pools all over the world. But this one's extra weird because you're just not expecting a shrimp to live in the hottest desert on Earth, and it's just nuts how long they can stay in egg form. So back in 2014, a couple researchers were analyzing soil samples from the Rann of Kutch in western India. If you've never heard of it, it's this massive flat desert made up of salt flats that get insanely hot and dry. You wouldn't think much of anything could survive there, but when they ran the soil through DNA tests, something weird popped up: traces of giant viruses. Regular viruses are tiny and pretty simple, but these ones, like Mimi virus and Pandora virus, are so big and complex that scientists argue over whether they should even count as viruses. They've got way more genes than usual ones that can do things regular viruses can't. What threw everyone off is that these kinds of viruses had only been found in water before. In ponds, oceans, stuff like that. So finding their DNA in dry desert soil where nothing's even supposed to be alive, it just doesn't seem to make any sense. But the team didn't confirm if the viruses are actually still active or if it's just leftover DNA hanging around. Australia has this tiny blind marsupial called the southern marsupial mole that lives almost entirely underground in the desert. Doesn't have eyes or visible ears, and its fur is super smooth, which helps it glide through loose sand like a fish swimming in water. Scientists say it sort of swims through the sand by wriggling its body and digging with its front claws. These moles are incredibly rare to see. most of what we know about them comes from ones that accidentally get dug up or turn up in predators' stomachs. They're a mystery in a lot of ways. Nobody's totally sure what they eat, but they probably feed on bugs, larvae, and other tiny critters living underground. Because these creatures spend almost all their lives underground, studying them is really tough. Lately, scientists have been using motion-triggered cameras and checking for traces of their DNA in the environment to figure out more, but they're still one of Australia's most mysterious mammals. Now, right next to the Chernobyl plant is a... Now, beside the massive catfish in the cooling ponds near Chernobyl, smaller fish in the rivers and lakes around Pripyat have shown some pretty unsettling traits. Researchers have talked about fish with physical deformities like missing eyes, bulging growths coming out of them, or just oddly shaped in general. The radiation that poured into the nearby waterways didn't just disappear, it seeped into the water, settling in the silt and got into the food chain. Small aquatic creatures absorbed it, and the fish that ate them absorbed even more. That kind of exposure messes with how cells divide and grow, and that's how you end up with fish that look like Blinky from The Simpsons. And then there are all the issues you can't see with the naked eye. Some fish are born sterile, others just don't live as long as they should, but there are still plenty swimming around. The strange thing is that some species have adapted better than others. Mutations don't always kill them off right away, they just make the fish look off. So while they might not be glowing like in cartoons, they're definitely not normal. This is one of the darkest and hardest to talk about. After the explosion, over 600,000 people were called in to help contain the disaster. These weren't all volunteers. Many were soldiers, firefighters, and regular workers who didn't fully understand how dangerous the job was. They were called liquidators, and their job was to clean up the mess, build the sarcophagus over the reactor, and stop the radiation from spreading. There's tons of footage and photographs of these people working away in Chernobyl, completely unaware of how the radiation would affect them later on. A lot of them went in without proper protection too, some with just a cloth mask or nothing at all, and the effects were brutal. Radiation burns, organ failure, thyroid cancer, and in some cases death within mere days. Some liquidators were exposed to such high doses that their bodies literally started breaking down on a cellular level. Some survivors lived for years afterward, but a lot of them did deal with long-term health issues like tumors, birth defects in their children, bone diseases. There are stories of liquidators who ended up completely isolated, physically and emotionally wrecked from what they experienced. So when people talk about mutations, it's not just fish and frogs, it's human lives that were permanently altered. After the Chernobyl disaster, every straight up visible proof of mutation from Chernobyl, check out the firebugs. These little red and black bugs are normally easy to spot because they have a really distinct pattern. But in the exclusion zone, researchers started finding ones that looked all kinds of messed up. Patterns were totally off. Some bugs had their markings in the wrong spots, others were missing parts altogether. Scientists Timothy Mousseau and Anders Moller actually did a study and found that the bugs living closer to the reactor were way more likely to have these deformities. They photographed tons of them and compared them to firebugs from outside the zone, and yeah, the difference is obvious. It's not the most dramatic mutation you'll ever see, but it's one of the clearest cases that got caught on camera.
Starting off at our number 10 spot, we have voles. Voles, those tiny furry rodents that look like they could be the star in a Disney movie, have a dark secret in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. They are the victims of their own diet. These creatures love mushrooms, and unfortunately, some mushroom species in the area are excellent at soaking up radiation like sponges. The result? Voles in radioactive hotspots show alarming trends. They're less fertile, their populations are dwindling, and their tiny eyes are developing cataracts at an unnaturally high rate. These symptoms highlight just how deeply radiation works its way through the food chain, showing no mercy even to the smallest forest residents. Next, we are talking about the mutated wolves. Wolves are not just surviving, they're actually thriving in Chernobyl's ghostly forests. Not only this, but they might actually be holding a secret that could help humanity. Studies by a Princeton University team revealed that these predators possess altered altered immune systems, potentially making them more resistant to cancer. Blood samples showed that their DNA has adapted in very unique ways, allowing them to tolerate the radiation-filled environment. Researchers believe these wolves could offer clues to combat cancer in humans. It's quite the twist of fate that the very landscape that should have destroyed them might have transformed them into something extraordinary. Next, we are talking about swallows. Barn swallows darting through the Chernobyl exclusion zone are more than just survivors of a nuclear disaster. They're carriers of a microscopic phenomenon that defies all logic. Nestled within their bodies are bacteria that have developed an extraordinary resistance to gamma radiation. These bacterial hitchhikers, exposed to generations of radioactive stress, have adapted in ways that turn one of nature's most destructive forces into a manageable environmental factor. Researchers have observed that these bacteria not only survive in high radiation conditions, but they actually thrive, suggesting that the disaster created an evolutionary pressure cooker that selected these near indestructible microbes. These microorganisms are effectively rewriting the rules of survival at the cellular level, raising questions about the adaptability of life in extreme conditions. Could this be a blueprint for how life might evolve in radioactive environments on other planets, or in the aftermath of nuclear catastrophes elsewhere? Next, we are talking about the lynx. The Eurasian lynx, long thought extinct in Europe, has staged a surprising return in Chernobyl's exclusion zone. With humans gone, these elusive cats have reclaimed their territory, thriving in the irradiated forests. While their radioactive exposure is unknown, scientists believe their radiation levels match other animals inside of the zone. Hundreds now roam the area, a long way from the extinction that people had thought. It is very clear that Chernobyl has shown us the unexpected consequences of a nuclear disaster and how nature has bounced back in ways that no one even thought was possible. These predators have turned Chernobyl into their sanctuary, a radioactive kingdom where humanity no longer rules. In our number 6 spot today, we have the radioactive boars. The wild boars of Chernobyl are spreading. It sounds like a terrifying zombie movie, and honestly, it kind of is. These radioactive animals roam beyond the exclusion zone, mingling with non-radioactive boars, and then sometimes ending up as food for unsuspecting humans. In 2017, a third of wild boars tested in Germany showed radiation levels too dangerous for consumption thanks to their love of radioactive mushrooms. The boar's mobility ensures that Chernobyl's legacy continues to spread far beyond its borders, turning an ordinary forest hunt into a potential brush with disaster.
The thorny devil is this little lizard that lives in the Australian outback and is completely covered in spikes from its head to its tail. The spikes make it look dangerous, but it's mostly harmless. It moves slowly, eats ants, doesn't put up much of a fight, but good luck biting into one, let alone swallowing it. Not that you want to do that anyway, just saying it is one of its defense mechanisms. One of the coolest things about it is how it drinks. It doesn't lick up water or sip from puddles. Instead, it collects moisture through tiny grooves in its skin. When there's dew or rain, the water travels across its body and straight into its mouth. It's like it has a built-in straw system. The thorny devil eats mostly ants and has a sticky tongue that helps slurp them up, and it'll eat thousands of them in a day. It also has this weird little fake head on the back of its neck. So when it feels threatened, it tucks its real head down and shows off the decoy to confuse predators. Not much else in the desert messes with it after that. Well, I may have just found my new favorite ant, because I'm a sucker for chrome. I mean, look at these things. They're like ants wearing knight's armor. It's called the silver ant, and it lives in the Sahara, one of the hottest places on Earth. The sand gets so hot, it can cook most insects alive, but the silver ant is built to deal with it. It only comes out during the hottest part of the day, which sounds insane, but it actually gives the ant an advantage here. Most predators are hiding from the heat, so it has the desert pretty much to itself. Its silver coating helps balance the sun's heat off its body, and its long legs keep it raised above the ground so it's not touching the hot sand. And when they come out, they scavenge. If a bug or lizard has died from the heat, silver ants race out, they grab what they can, and they rush back underground before they overheat. They're insanely fast too, running about 2 feet per second. That is pretty insane to picture, like 2 feet. What do we got there? 1 second? That's pretty crazy. This one sounds kind of made up, but the screaming hairy armadillo is 100% real. It lives in the dry grasslands and deserts of South America, mostly Argentina and Bolivia. And yes, these things actually scream. When it gets panicked, feels threatened, it lets out this loud, high-pitched screech. It kind of sounds weirdly human. Take a listen to this. So that weird scream plus its tough armor is usually enough to get it out of trouble. These armadillos are covered in soft hair underneath all that hard plating, which is where the hairy part of their name comes from. The fur helps keep it warm at night, since desert temperatures drop super fast. During the day, it burrows underground to stay cool, digging pretty fast with its front claws. It's mostly a nighttime animal, coming out to hunt bugs, worms, and plants after dark. They've been seen eating small lizards and rodents. Even with the armor, they're surprisingly quick when they want to be. Camel spiders are desert arachnids, mostly found in places like the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of the American Southwest. They're not actual spiders or scorpions. They belong to their own group called Solifuges. They have huge jaws that can be nearly as long as their body. They use them to grab, crush, and chew insects, small lizards, and even scorpions. Unlike some arachnids, camel spiders don't have venom, but their bite still hurts because of how strong their jaws are. They're famous for being fast runners. Some can sprint at up to 10 miles per hour. Most camel spiders hunt at night and hide during the day under rocks or in burrows to avoid the desert heat. These spiders are also shy. They usually avoid humans, so scientists find them tough to study. They're quick, they're nocturnal, they don't stick around in one place, but they play an important role in the desert. Like a lot of other spiders, they help control insect populations. So, as creepy as they look, camel spiders help keep things balanced. The sandfish lizard lives in the deserts of North Africa and the Middle East. It's about 6 to 8 inches long, with smooth, shiny scales that let it slip easily through loose sand. When the sun gets too hot, or if it senses danger, it dives straight into the sand and sort of swims under the surface by moving its body in a wave-like motion, almost like a fish in water. To keep sand out, it closes its eyes and its nostrils. While underground, it hunts insects, spiders, scorpions. It can stay buried for several minutes before coming back out again. Scientists have been fascinated by the sandfish's swimming technique because it's one of the best examples of an animal perfectly adapted to life in the desert. Actually, the way it moves inspired engineers to try creating robots that can move through sand or rubble in the same kind of way.
At number 10, the pink dolphin. The fascinating world of aquatic enigmas takes us deep into the mysterious rivers where an astonishing creature dwells. The Amazon river dolphin, scientifically known as Ina geofrensis. Sorry, I definitely butchered that. These remarkable beings are the largest of all river dolphins, yet their most striking feature is their unique coloration transformation. Born with a modest gray tint, these dolphins undergo a mesmerizing metamorphosis as they age, evolving into vibrant shades of pink. It's a stunning phenomenon that leaves us with the question, what drives this change? Scientists grapple with the intricacies of color transformation, considering variables such as behavior, diet, and the proximity of capillaries to the skin. These mysterious processes remains one of nature's most fascinating enigmas, reminding us that even in the familiar waters of our rivers, there are still astonishing mysteries waiting to be unraveled. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is the Manaconda. In the depths of the Amazon rivers, a bizarre creature lurks, defying easy classification. One such entity is Atritochoana acelti, butchered that too, affectionately nicknamed the Manaconda or floppy snake. Far from the risque imagery its phallic appearance might conjure, this bizarre is a caecilian, or caecilian, I'll let the editor decide, a limbless amphibian and the second largest lungless tetrapod on Earth. Imagine what's essentially a serpent without lungs, breathing solely through its skin, measuring up to 81 centimeters in length. Discovered in the late 1800s, it vanished from scientific view until a 2011 rediscovery reignited curiosity. These cryptid creatures possess near invisible eyes, yet they thrive in Amazon rivers, relying on a acute sense of smell to navigate murky waters. At number 8 is fish with human teeth. Rivers, the lifeblood of our planet, conceal mysteries that continue to baffle scientists. Take the pacu, for instance, a freshwater fish resembling the notorious piranha. Yet these aquatic enigmas boast a peculiar feature that sets them apart. human-like teeth. Square and straight, these teeth are designed for crushing nuts and fruits that descend into the Amazon waters from the lush canopy above. However, the pacu's dietary proclivities have sparked some disturbing rumors. Swimmers take heed, because some individuals claim that these nut-cracking fish have an unsettling penchant for consuming human gonads with their preferred snacks, earning them the ominous monikers like testicle-eating fish or ball-cutter fish. At number 7, the giant stingray. Now when it comes to bizarre creatures lurking in rivers, you can't overlook the giant stingray. This aquatic behemoth is the heavyweight champion of freshwater fish, clocking in at a staggering 5 meters in length and tipping the scales at a jaw-dropping 600 kilograms. Picture a massive, flat, disc-shaped body gliding stealthily beneath the water's surface, armed with a menacing barbed tail and a mouth positioned rather unconventionally on the underside of its head. But what sets this creature apart is its ability to deliver a powerful electric shock to its prey or potential predators. Basically an underwater taser. Found in murky rivers across Southeast Asia and Australia, the giant stingray remains a mystery for scientists. How does it generate such a jolt of electricity and why? At number 6, the decoy spider. The world of rivers and rainforests holds a secret beyond imagination. Take, for instance, the enigmatic decoy-building spider, a mere 5mm marvel. This master of deception crafts an intricate illusion with its web. It assembles a decoy spider from the lifeless husks of leaves and debris. Tambapada Research Center, this creature defies explanation. Is it an entirely new species or a cunning imposter? Scientists are poised to unravel this mystery, but for now we're left with a creature that challenges our understanding of nature's artistry.
At our number 5 spot and halfway mark, we have the eagles. The lynx isn't the only one making a huge comeback. The mighty white-tailed eagles, endangered across much of Europe, are making quite the appearance in Chernobyl. These birds, perched atop abandoned watchtowers, add to the ghostly atmosphere of the exclusion zone. While their populations are growing, which is great, they are not immune to radiation's effects. Researchers have found tumors, beak deformities, and lower fertility rates in some of the zone's 249 bird species. Yet, the eagles still continue to flourish, reclaiming a land stripped of human interference, but still full of invisible dangers. Next, we are talking about mutated spiders. Spiders are bad enough when they're normal. Mutated spiders are the stuff of nightmares. The spiders of Chernobyl's Red Forest are spinning webs that seem straight out of a horror movie. Their webs are oddly shaped, with chaotic patterns suggesting some very mysterious genetic mutations at play, and even more disturbing, these webs are radioactive themselves, laced with particles that have settled into the environment over decades. The spiders and their prey live and die in these toxic traps, creating a macabre cycle of contamination that illustrates how deeply radiation has seeped into even the tiniest details of life in the zone. In our number 3 spot today, we are talking about bison. The hulking bison of Chernobyl's exclusion zone, weighing up to a staggering 2,200 pounds, are living symbols of nature's resilience, but also its vulnerabilities. These majestic creatures graze on vegetation laced with radioactive particles absorbed from the soil. Every mouthful of grass or bark adds to their radiation load as isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90 continue to circulate through the ecosystem decades after the disaster. Their sheer size and strength make them nearly invincible to predators, but radiation exposure has its own invisible consequences. Researchers have raised concerns about the long-term effects on their health and reproduction, including potential mutations, weakened immune systems, and shortened lifespans. Even more unsettling is the role these bison play in spreading the contamination. As they roam through the exclusion zone, their movements redistribute radioactive particles. Despite the risks, like many of the other animals, the bison have found a strange kind of sanctuary in this human-free wilderness. Their numbers are growing, and conservationists cautiously monitor their progress, marveling at how one of Europe's rarest animals has adapted to an environment hostile to most life forms. Next, we are talking about invertebrates. From one of the largest largest animals to some of the smallest, beneath the soil of Chernobyl's forests, the tiny creatures are waging a quiet battle for survival. Populations of bumblebees, butterflies, and grasshoppers have plummeted in areas with high radiation. The radioactive soil, saturated with cesium-137 and strontium-90, interferes with their ability to lay viable eggs, cutting off future generations. These losses ripple up the food chain, affecting everything from birds to small mammals. Invertebrates' decline is a reminder that radiation's most devastating impacts often begin with the smallest players in an ecosystem. And finally, to end off this list, in our number 1 spot, we are talking about fungi. For this one, we are heading right inside the heart of the reactor itself, the place where this all really started. Deep within the reactor's ruins, black fungi cling to life on the walls of the destroyed core itself. Species like Cryptococcus neoformans and Cladosporium don't just survive radiation, they actually use it as an energy source. Researchers have discovered that these fungi contain melanin, a pigment that absorbs ionizing radiation and turns it into chemical energy, much like plants use sunlight in photosynthesis. This ability, dubbed radiotropism, is as unsettling as it is fascinating, raising questions about what other life forms might adapt to survive in similarly extreme conditions.
At number 10, a new deep-sea batfish, what I can only describe as wet ravioli with a face. This dumpling with a face has been called cute all over the internet, so from now on, if I'm ever called cute, I'm taking it as an insult. As Consider Nature on Reddit put it so eloquently, batfish are a benthic anglerfish which can be found on the ocean floor in tropical and subtropical waters worldwide. Unlike the deep-sea anglerfish we usually think of having glowing lures, batfish lures release chemical signals that attract prey. Kinda like if you tried to attract a French person by duct taping some smelly cheese to your forehead. Can confirm this does work, by the way. Batfish pelvic fins are thick and muscular, allowing batfish to use them to walk across the seafloor. They're actually generally poor swimmers. Now this guy probably looks nothing like that when underwater. Like the blobfish, a lot of deep sea fish have bodies that are designed to be squished by intense ocean pressures. I can't confirm this, but I believe that this fellow over here employs a similar strategy to the blobfish in that he has naturally gelatinous tissues that are designed to be compressed and give it a more neutral buoyancy, allowing it to stay at or just above the seafloor very easily. That makes sense since this fella is a bottom dweller. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9, way too many arms. This newly discovered sea creature looks more like a bowl of ramen. In the depths of the northwestern Africa coast, scientists trawling these rawlers grasp at a new discovery. See what I did there? Astrodendron juancarlosi, a newly discovered basket sea star species, a distant cousin of the starfish family with countless arms that intricately weave and wind. With a body resembling a tangle of ropes adorned with pointed calcium bumps, this enigmatic being blends seamlessly with the corals it calls home at depths of 150 to 2,600 feet beneath the waves. At number 8 is the mysterious gelatinous creature spotted in the uncharted reef in the Pacific as recently as June of this year, 2023. Diving into the uncharted oceanic realms 900 miles south of the Hawaiian Islands and 4,600 feet below the surface, researchers stumbled upon a true enigma, a vibrant, bright orange creature with 3 arm-like extensions atop its head. Resembling a jellyfish but defying convention, initially this creature was thought to be a helmet jellyfish, but after the researchers reached out to an expert on dry land, it was discovered that it's actually a rare species belonging to the Bathychorus genus. This bizarre species had only been seen once before, back in 2015, and it still remains nameless, a true mystery of the deep sea ocean. At number 7 is the slender shrimp, the 8-foot tall tentacled and faceless shrimp in a suit that stalks from the shadows. I'm kidding, but that is what this shrimp is called though. Deep beneath the waves of the Sea of Japan, a peculiar sight unfolded. Imagine, if you will, a minuscule shrimp adorned with crimson spots gracefully navigating the seafloor's rocky expanse. Its delicate, almost see-through body and spindly antennae gave it an air of mystique. Now what's fascinating is that this shrimp, dubbed A. exilis being Latin for slender, hence the terrible opening joke, is no ordinary find. It's an entirely new species, a remarkable addition to the ocean's inventory of life. At number 6 is the faceless fish. Shoot, I should have saved my Slenderman joke for this one. Oh well. In the uncharted depths of Australia's coast, a team of scientists embarked on a daring journey. Their mission? To unveil the mysteries hidden beneath the waves. And unveiled they did, a remarkable discovery, a fish like no other, lacking eyes and a discernible face. The faceless cusk, as it was affectionately named, emerged from the icy darkness, captivating all who laid eyes on it. But hold on tight, because here comes the twist. The faceless wonder wasn't entirely new to the world. It turned out to be a cusk eel, Typhonus nasus, or blind hake in the language of ancient Greece. At number 5, the Titanoboa. In the murky depths of water system around the world, a strange and enigmatic creature continues to baffle scientists. This marvel is called the Titanoboa, a colossal serpent that once ruled prehistoric waters. Fossil discovered during a 2002 expedition, hey, that's when I was born, in Colombia, unveiled this ancient behemoth's astonishing size. Imagining a snake stretching up to 42 feet, possibly even 47 feet, and weighing a mind-boggling 1,600 to 2,500 pounds. These massive serpents have been mistakenly identified as crocodile remains due to their immense proportions. But the mystery doesn't end there. In 2009, an intrepid adventurer, Mike Warner, ventured deep into the Amazon wilderness to search for a modern-day Titanoboa. Armed with satellite imagery and a team of explorers, Mike and his son Greg embarked on an expedition to confluence the Napo and Amazon rivers. They claimed to have captured photographic evidence of a colossal snake roughly 40 meters long and 2 meters wide. This discovery has ignited debates about the potential existence of gigantic snakes in the Amazon, with Mike and his son remain undeterred, planning more expeditions and advocating for thermal imaging surveys to unravel the mystery of these river-dwelling leviathan. At number 4, the long-nosed chimera. Bizarre creatures lurking beneath the surface of rivers continue to perplex scientists. Take the long-nosed chimera, for instance. Resembling something out of a sci-fi movie, this mysterious fish baffles experts. With its elongated pointed snout, it's reminiscent of a mythical creature. But it's no fantasy. It's a real denizen of the deep. Armed with a venomous spine and whip-like tail, the chimera inhabits the abysmal depths. At number 3 is Iria. Deep within the heart of Brazilian folklore lies the mysterious tale of Iria, a Bigolian creature of the rivers whose origins remain shrouded in enigma. Described as a bewitching maiden with emerald locks and a sinuous tail resembling that of a river dolphin or manatee, Iria's seductive presence along riverbanks has perplexed scientists and storytellers alike. That Iria would serenade unsuspecting men, luring them into her aquatic embrace where they would unwittingly forsake their terrestrial lives. Some versions of the tale, however, take a darker turn, suggesting that she would ruthlessly dispatch her captivated suitors, leaving behind only a haunting mystery. Intriguingly, alternate renditions paint Iria as a fierce warrior in a perpetual tribe whose own kin sought her demise. As the tale unfolds, it reveals the transformation of a vengeful mermaid determined to ensnare and torment men. At number 2 was the Montauk Monster, a cryptic creature that emerged from the depths of Long Island's waters. It continues to bewilder scientists and enthusiasts alike. 10 years have passed since its initial appearance, yet its true identity remains shrouded in mystery, much like the murky waters it hailed from. Claws, leathery skin, and a beak left experts scratching their heads, debating whether it was a raccoon, a sea turtle, or perhaps something altogether different. William Wise, a voice of skepticism from the Living Marine Resources Institute at Stony Brook University, dismissed it as either a fake or the unfortunate remains of a deceased dog or coyote. What adds to the intrigue is the inexplicable vanishing act of this peculiar creature, as it seemingly dissolved into obscurity after its inherent debut. The Montauk Monster, like a phantom of the river's depths, lingers in the annals of aquatic enigmas. And at number 1 is the Yakumama, a cryptic legend woven into the tapestry of the Amazon rainforest. This second colossal serpent, whispered to be around 50 meters in length, navigates the shadowy depths of rivers, its existence a perplexing enigma. Tales of Yakumama's colossal appetite and its uncanny ability to conjure whirlpools, drawing in water and air, defy our understanding of the natural world. Yet beneath these tales, a tantalizing question lingers. Could Yakumama be more than just folklore? In a world where science continues to unveil mysteries, the possibilities of such a colossal serpent lurking within the depths of the Amazon remains a tantalizing riddle, beckoning explorers and researchers to uncover the truth. From the elusive river monsters of folklore to the real-life oddities that continue to baffle scientists, the depths of waterways remain a frontier of discovery. As we learned today, there's always more to explore, more to uncover, and more to wonder about in the world around us. So keep those eyes peeled, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to solve the next aquatic riddle that stumps even the brightest scientific minds.
Number 10, the big fin squid. This deep sea creature will probably be in your nightmares tonight. Looking like a mix between spaghetti and the hair I pulled out of my shower drain this morning, this is the big fin squid. This creature was discovered only about 20 years ago and was first mainly noticed when a group of researchers had been diving to a shipwreck and seen the terrifying squid instead. It's known to live miles beneath the water's surface and seems to just float around in the water. They can grow around 6 meters long, with most of that being in its tentacles and arms, which scientists really don't understand. As the squid appears to just drift around, they're not really sure how it actually uses its tentacles. One thing they do know, however, is that these spaghetti noodles have microscopic suckers on them, which scientists theorize they use to catch prey that bump into them, and they then drag their meal along the sea floor. Number 9. The immortal jellyfish. If any of you out there are planning on discovering how to live forever, these so-called immortal jellyfish may be your ticket to success. When the jellyfish eggs hatch, they grow to full size in just a few weeks, but they don't grow very large. The average size of one of these creatures is only about the size of your pinky nail. So what makes these tiny little guys unique from all the other species of jellyfish out there? Whenever they become damaged or even begin to starve, they reverse back in the developmental process. If you think about the life cycle of a frog that you probably studied in school, they go backwards in this cycle, reverting back to their early stage of a polyp. They can then grow up again, genetically identical to the jellyfish that it used to be, or still is. They can also create clones of themselves, so while one may die, that same creature might still be floating around somewhere. Scientists are desperately looking into this process and how they do it, as they want to look into the medical applications of the jellyfish's abilities. Number 8. The Yeti crab. This fuzzy-looking crab was only recently discovered in the mid-2000s, and it's got scientists baffled. They were discovered just south of Easter Island and appear to thrive around hydrothermal vents underwater. It's believed that they eat mollusks around the vents and also appear to grow bacteria on their arms by holding them over top of it so that they can then eat the bacteria later. These animals are also pretty stuck where they are. They are virtually blind due to their deep sea location and only seem to be able to live within very close proximity to the vents. If they wander even just a few meters away from the area, they're highly likely to die. Because of this, the Yeti crabs are typically seen hanging out in massive piles, sometimes up to 600 crabs per square meter, making pictures of these groups of crabs a little unsettling to look at. Not much is known about these guys yet, so it might be a while before we get some solid answers about just how they came to evolve to survive next to these hydrothermal vents. Number 7. Rangeomorph. This next one probably isn't one you've ever heard about or seen when you've been walking around. That's because this is a fossil that scientists are working hard to try and understand. It's referred to as an Ediacaran and has had researchers confused for years. So here's what we do know about this prehistoric creature. They were largely immobile and could grow to sizes larger than humans. It's especially unique as it's one of the first large multicellular organisms that seem to exist before the first real animals ever evolved. A scan of the fossils allowed researchers to look into the physical makeup of this creature. It had strange internal structures, including its cone-shaped central trunk and the 6 fern-like fronds extending out from it to form a primitive kind of skeleton. There's still a lot to do to figure out just what exactly this creature was, and it's hard to figure out as it disappeared an estimated 540 million years ago. Number 6. Crows. I know what you're thinking. Crows? Yes. Crows. While they may seem like simple avians that you hear squawking away during the day, there's a lot to these birds that scientists don't really seem to understand. The main one being that these guys are mean. Some people know that crows are extremely smart and can be trained to do tasks, as well as having built-in problem-solving capabilities. Well, it looks like they are putting their brains to use. It was discovered in a recent study that crows hold grudges. They can remember the faces of people who captured them and will still be mad about it up to 2 years later. Another interesting fact about that is that they will even pass on these feelings to their friends and family members and encourage them to attack specific people as well. So I think it's in the best interest of all of us to not go out and antagonize any crows.
At number 5, Antarctic creatures under ice. Scientists accidentally stumbled upon a real-life frozen party under a colossal 900-meter thick ice shelf. The scientists have been drilling through Antarctic ice for cores explorers, only to discover sponge-like creatures and other potential unknown species hanging out on a boulder at the sea floor. Now here's the kicker. These creatures aren't the animals we're used to, since these extremophiles are chilling, literally, in an environment previously thought to be uninhabitable. Complete darkness, freezing cold, and no snacks. And yet, these critters are living proof that life can thrive in the most unlikely places. But despite the fact that they're right there, scientists are still baffled about how they could possibly survive down there, having been found a whopping 1,500 kilometers away from any source of light for photosynthesis. So what's the deal with these Antarctic partygoers? How did they end up there, and what's on the menu? At number 4 is the translucent blind eel. This nightmare fish was only discovered just recently, so there's not a whole lot of information about this dude just yet. But from what I can find, it's thought to be a new type of blind cusk eel. So it's not really a true eel, but a type of bony fish. It was found 3 miles below the surface, and its skin is described as loose, flabby, and gelatinous. Blind cusk eels also maintain the traits of their young into adulthood. Think salamanders versus axolotls. Their breeding habits are also pretty interesting. When encountering a female blind cusk eel, the male will give her something called a spermatophore, which is basically a little capsule full of sperm, so she can fertilize her eggs when she chooses rather than laying them, and she'll eventually give birth to live young. Big shout out to Yellow Bloods on Reddit for consolidating all of this information. At number 3, tripod fish. In the depths of the ocean, a strange character takes the stage, the tripod fish. This deep sea oddity stands tall on elongated fins, defying the slow currents near the ocean floor. It's an odd looking yet calculated stance, standing on the substrate facing the current and piercing about 3 feet above the sea floor with its elongated fins, elevating it high enough as to be affected by the deep sea ocean current, which is almost non-existent on or slightly above the ocean floor. Up high enough where there's more current, these elongated rays like mystical tendrils shift from stiff to fluid depending on whether or not it's in hunting mode or swimming mode. As if the spectacle wasn't enough, the tripod fish sports pectoral fins that reach out like inquisitive antennae, feeling its way through the dark waters. This creature's bizarre adaptations remind us that even in the most uncharted corners, life still finds a way to mesmerize and thrive. At number 2 is the terrifying translucent high-fin lizardfish. If you're scared of what lurks in the depths of the ocean, look away now. The deep sea lizardfish with their innumerable razor-sharp teeth are apex predators of the midnight zone, lurking over 3,000 feet below the surface. Cold and dark, they thrive in temperatures around 38 degrees Fahrenheit. These ambush masters feast on anything that swims by, including their own kind. Remarkably, they're also hermaphrodites, so no mate goes unnoticed. And at number 1, a new 10-legged crustacean discovered on China again in June of this year. Deep within the mysterious forests of China, a peculiar discovery has emerged, a tiny crab with 10 legs. Huddled in muddy puddles, these enigmatic crustaceans, which are now named Cinelopodemon curatum, have been quietly dwelling beneath the rocks in Duqiaoshan Forest Park, undetected until now. What sets them apart besides their leg count is their distinctive body shape, a bluntly angular form in a world of pointy relatives. Now, these newfound inhabitants of the puddle realm aren't alone. Researchers speculate that there might be more of these curious crabs waiting to be unveiled in neighboring provinces. Let this tale serve as a reminder that the world's oddities are often hidden in plain sight, just waiting for curious mind to take a peek under the rocks and bring them to light.
In our number 10 spot, we have Sasquatch. Alright guys, there have been so many Sasquatch sightings over the years that I'm pretty sure he lives in our universe, but who knows, maybe he jumps between other universes. I could believe it. There was a crazy Sasquatch sighting off of a ski slope where at least 20 people stopped skiing to take a look at the giant hairy creature that looks just like every description of Sasquatch. Giant, about 8 to 10 inches, high, hairy, ape-like, living in the woods. Someone got it on film, but it's so far away that you can only make out how big it is, but none of its features. Its features were hidden behind a shadow. The people that saw it firsthand, though, swear that it's a Sasquatch. It is believed that Sasquatch is a human ancestor that never evolved the same way the rest of us did, which, I don't know, could be possible, but I think it came here from another universe, personally. Or perhaps another time. Maybe it walked through time somehow. Or if it came from another universe, maybe it came from a place where only Sasquatches exist. If you like this video, don't forget to smash that like button, as it will really help us out. In our number 9 spot, we have Nessie. Nessie has got to be real. There has gotta be magic left in this world. There has to be. I refuse to believe otherwise. Do you know how many sightings there have been of Nessie? Okay, fine, me either. But There have been many, like too many to count. There's a whole website dedicated to people sharing their sighting stories. My theory is though, it must live on another plane of existence and come down to ours every so often, or it's from a parallel universe and slips into ours. Or do you think it's possible that we get glimpses into other universes at times? Here is a video though, taken from the air that shows us a brief moment when perhaps Nessie visited our universe. This video is nuts because if you want to argue that the creature swimming is not Nessie, then what is it? A long-necked dinosaur that still exists? Perhaps a swimming giraffe? Like, come on. Nessie is real, y'all. This video is totally showing something. In our number 8 spot, we have the werewolf. Another mythological creature that might actually live in another parallel universe is the werewolf. Why? I don't know, because it feels like it should exist. Also, there have been sightings of it every so often, and it's always alone, so it's possible that it exists in our universe, but something makes me think that if it did, then why haven't we seen more than one? It would have had to reproduce somehow. Unless it can reproduce on its own, then perhaps I might believe it. Fun fact, a lot of species can actually reproduce via an immaculate conception. A turkey is one of them. Mind blown, I didn't know. Anyways, here's a very cool / interesting sighting of a werewolf that took place in Brazil in 2015. What's cool about this footage is that many people actually saw this creature and wrote about it online, and so it does give the picture some validity. He has long pointy ears, strange wolf-like legs, and has a small tail. The shot is blurry as it's night out, but you can still see that whatever it is, it's not human. You know what it reminds me of? Stranger Things. And the Demogorgon came from a parallel universe, so perhaps that's what this is. In our number 7 spot, we have the parking lot demon. Hey, demons are creatures too. I had to include this one on this list because this could be a demon or a ghost, but whatever it is, it's definitely not from our universe, or it's on another plane of existence and glitching into ours. So the story goes that years ago in Serbia, a woman was being chased by something in a parking lot. She was so scared that she went to the police to report it. The police reviewed the camera footage from the parking lot and discovered something insane. Yes, the woman was being chased, but whoever was chasing her was a transparent human. That's right, see-through. This was such a shock to the police that the story made it onto their local news. The footage is so wild to see that personally I think it makes you an instant believer after viewing it. Believer in something. Not necessarily demons or ghosts, but a believer that there is something magical out there that we don't know about yet. In our number 6 spot, we have mermaids. A mermaid is a mythological creature that is half human, half fish that is said to live in the sea. Under the sea. For centuries, people have believed in mermaids. Fishermen have recalled tales of seeing a fish that looked human, and of course they say that every story comes from some truth. Whether the story of the Little Mermaid actually came from a real sighting of a mermaid is up for debate. Some believe that mermaids exist but perhaps look different than what we would imagine them to be. There have been videos that fishermen have posted online of fish that could pass as mermaids, such as in this clip. This fish has 4 breasts, a big tummy, arms like a human, but has a shark-like head and mermaid-like fin for legs. So perhaps this could be a mermaid, it just doesn't have the long red hair and look as glamorous as Ariel. Regardless, the sea is a whole other universe that we haven't explored much of, so I bet you mermaids do exist.
Number 5, the platypus. If you grew up watching Phineas and Ferb, then you're probably familiar with the mammal known as a platypus. But you're probably not familiar with just how strange and unique these duck beavers actually are. When looking at pictures, you might notice that a platypus is not actually turquoise like Perry, but is actually just brown. Well, if you put a platypus under an ultraviolet light, it will actually grow a blue-green color. But unfortunately, a cool hat doesn't immediately appear as well. They are probably best known for being one of only a handful of mammals that lay eggs, and for having a powerful deadly venom on their back legs. One other thing that you may not have known about these guys is that they give sharks a run for their money. And no, not in fighting each other, but I would pay to see that. Instead, it's in the way that they hunt. Even though they're mammals, they mostly hunt underwater, and they close off all their senses while they do so, only using their electrical signals and powers of electrosensitivity in order to find their prey. Number 4, the Argentine ant. If you think it's cool that you have friends all across the globe thanks to the internet, just wait until you hear about the massive global colony of the Argentine ant. They have managed to spread to every country except Antarctica and exist in massive underground colonies, even holding the record for largest known ant colony in the world, spanning across 6,000 kilometers. These invasive species have become a massive problem across the world as they appear to have been waging wars with different species of ants, taking over their ecosystems faster than you can say colonization. Due to the super colonies that these ants are capable of creating, they have strength in numbers, and their population just seems to be continuing to grow. When Argentine ants from the main large colonies were pitted against each other to see if they would fight, they actually seemed to recognize each other and engaged in a greeting. So let's just hope they're not planning on banding together and taking over Earth anytime soon. Number 3. Cows. I know, everybody has seen a cow before, so what's so weird about it? Well, cows do in fact have one large mystery amongst them that scientists are struggling to figure out. If you've ever driven past a cow field and seen that all the cows seem to be facing in the same direction, there's a reason for that. It looks to some researchers that cows are magnetic. They seem to prefer to stand and graze in accordance to electromagnetic fields, always seeming to stand in a north or south direction. Researchers took satellite pictures of tons of cows in pastures and noticed the similarities in the way that they all seem to align themselves. They also ruled out any other reasons for the cows standing in such a way, such as avoiding the heat, wind, or other elements. I would also choose to argue that aliens put magnets in the cows in order to more easily lift them up into their UFOs. But hey, that's just my theory. Number 2, the Greenland shark. There are tons of different species of sharks out there, and one of the apparently more abnormal and unique ones is the Greenland shark. They're a fairly new find, only first being photographed in 1995, and as a result, we really don't know much about them and have had some trouble explaining some of their behaviors. They can become the size of a great white, able to grow more than 20 feet long and weigh more than 2,500 pounds. They also seem to live a very long time, with the current estimate of their lifespan being around 400 years, and only seeming to reach maturity at the age of around 150. As they live in deep waters, they are often mostly blind and rely on their other senses, which is lucky for them as they can often fall victim to a parasite in their eyes, rendering the organs pretty useless. Their skin is also poisonous and can only be eaten after properly preparing it for months, a process which includes burying the meat in the ground, though I'm not sure why you'd want to go to such long lengths for a bite of shark anyways. Number 1, the axolotl. Probably one of the cutest creatures on this list, we're finishing it off with the axolotl. Fans of Minecraft are probably familiar with this little guy. The creature has many strange abilities which have left many people baffled. One of the most notable is probably its ability to completely regenerate lost limbs, as well as its heart, lungs, spinal cord, and even parts of its brain, and the tissue is regrown without even leaving any scarring behind. Scientists are also especially interested in this creature because they are incredibly resistant to cancer, and they're hoping to find a way to harness the axolotl's natural defense to the disease. They are only able to be found in Mexico, and despite having no major predators, are incredibly endangered, mostly having issues with other creatures eating up their resources. And the reason these guys are so cute is because they have a condition that allows them to keep most of their larval features, which causes them to look pretty similar to big tadpoles.
After the Chernobyl disaster, one of the first obvious signs of mutation was in the local bird populations. Researchers started noticing barn swallows with bright white patches, a condition called partial albinism, which is rare under normal circumstances. And along with the odd coloring though, some birds had twisted beaks, deformed toes, and strangely shaped tail feathers. These weren't just small defects either. Some of the beak deformities made it almost impossible for the birds to feed properly. According to studies published in journals like Biological Conservation, these mutations were especially common within the highly contaminated areas closest to the reactor. The birds' survival rates were much lower than normal too. A lot of the albino swallows didn't make it through their first year. Scientists figure the radiation damaged their DNA, leading to these visible abnormalities. Interestingly, the frequency of these mutations actually gives researchers clues about how dangerous certain areas still are today. High numbers of mutated swallows usually means higher residual radiation levels. Even now, generations later, you could still find birds around Chernobyl with unusual markings or growth defects. Inside Chernobyl, scientists discovered something totally unexpected. Some species of fungi show a phenomenon called radiotropism, where instead of growing toward light like normal plants, these fungi actually grow toward radioactive material. According to research shared by the National Institutes of Health, these fungi use melanin, the same pigment that gives human skin its color, to absorb radiation and turn it into energy. Almost like photosynthesis, but instead of using sunlight, they're using deadly gamma rays. So not only can these fungi handle huge doses of radiation that would kill most living things, they actually prefer it. Samples were even brought up to the International Space Station to see how they would react to cosmic radiation, and again, they were just fine. One of the eeriest sights in Chernobyl is the Red Forest, a place where pine trees absorbed so much radiation that they turned rusty red before dying. But some trees didn't just die, they mutated. According to the BBC, researchers noticed that a lot of pine trees developed strange needles. Instead of fanning out like normal, their needles were clumped together in these thick, tangled bunches. In some cases, the trees looked almost like natural bonsai, stunted, twisted, sometimes missing their tops completely. Normally, pines grow in a clean, upward pointing shape, but radiation damage scrambled their growth patterns. Mutations affected how cells divided and how these trees structured their branches and leaves. Some trees stayed abnormally small even decades later, others grew in these chaotic, knotted shapes. Scientists say the Red Forest today is one of the most radioactive outdoor places on Earth, so it makes sense that the trees would be kinda messed up. While a lot of animals around Chernobyl died off after the meltdown, some species, like the bank vole, a small rodent, adapted pretty well. According to a study in Nature Communications, these rodents show clear signs of genetic damage. Their DNA has more breaks and mutations compared to voles living outside the zone, but instead of dying out, a lot of them have somehow developed to better repair their DNA. It's not that the radiation didn't mess them up, it absolutely did. Researchers just found evidence of abnormalities. What's crazy though is that these voles are still surviving in one of the most contaminated parts of the world. Some scientists think natural selection favored ones that could fix their damaged DNA better, allowing them to pass those traits on. Rotifers, microscopic animals that live in fresh water, have been studied in Chernobyl's contaminated ponds. According to Frontiers in Microbiology, researchers found that rotifers from the exclusion zone can survive much higher doses of radiation than ones outside it. Instead of just dying from DNA damage like you'd expect, these rotifers seem to have upgraded at a cellular level. They developed better systems of repairing their DNA, and possibly even in ways to protect it from radiation damage in the first place. Rotifers are already known for surviving crazy conditions like being frozen solid or dried out for years, but Chernobyl pushed them even further. These little guys adapted in a way that scientists are still trying to fully understand. And now, some researchers are looking into whether the rotifers' abilities could help humans or other animals deal with radiation better one day. Right after the Chernobyl explosion, researchers started noticing that insects were showing some changes. Beetles and grasshoppers with missing parts became pretty common. The worst mutations showed up in areas closest to the reactor, where radiation levels were just off the charts, of course. Insects would hatch with warped or missing body parts that made it almost impossible for them to survive. Wings would come out crumpled, antennae, which insects need to sense their environment, would be stubs or just completely gone. Some beetles had legs growing in the wrong places or extra limbs. Scientists were able to connect the number and severity of deformities directly to how much radiation the insects were exposed to. The first few years after the disaster saw the worst of it, obviously. Over time, the number of severe mutations dropped, mostly because the most damaged insects didn't survive to reproduce.
In our number 5 spot, we have gods and goddesses. Gods and goddesses have been worshipped and believed in since, well, the dawn of time. No, they are not mythical creatures, but they are mythical and needed to be on this list. Do you ever think about where the heck the stories about gods and goddesses perhaps came from? Did one person make them up and then others expanded on them? Perhaps. But what if none of them were made up? What if the story of Thor was channeled and it is really a story that took place in another parallel universe? It's definitely possible. There have been a few strange sightings of gods and goddesses over the years. There is one sighting of an eye in the clouds that people wondered if it was the eye of God. It's pretty wild to see, and I wonder what you think. Is this a pure coincidence that the clouds look like an eye, or perhaps is that the eye of God watching us, or a god watching us? In our number 4 spot we have dragons. Dragons are mythical creatures that fly, have long tails, and breathe fire. They have long been cherished by the people of China, who on many occasions have said that they feel the spirit of them or have spotted them. There is a video that was once floating around the internet that would make you think that perhaps they are real. This video isn't confirmed to be real though, but if it is, aw, that's the cutest baby dragon ever. The second video, however, is for sure real, and it is honestly a bit frightening to see. Some think that's a dragon, and some think it's a god or Jesus. But honestly, it could very well be an alien too. Personally, I think dragons most likely exist as a whole in another universe, but it's possible that we may have one or two in our universe as well. Who knows? In our number 3 spot we have the Loveland frog. Before this video, I had never heard of this mythical creature. This creature is essentially a giant humanoid that has qualities of a frog. Much to my surprise, there have been some sightings of this creature that definitely make you think, huh, perhaps it is real. Not enough up close and personal sightings though. But perhaps this is another creature that is from another universe. Watch, there is another universe out there where all of these creatures live and no humans exist. Then we would be their mythical creatures. Here is some footage someone found of what looks to be a Loveland frog. It certainly looks like one to me. I would love to know your thoughts. In our number 2 spot we have the Yeti. The Yeti is an ape-like being entity that people have spoken about as a mythical creature from Asia. No scientist has ever been able to get face to face with a Yeti, and so therefore it hasn't been officially classified as real. But just because we haven't gotten up close and personal with something doesn't mean that it is not real. Perhaps the Yeti has been hiding from humans. Perhaps the Yeti doesn't trust humans. Perhaps the Yeti is just from another universe. Well, not too long ago there were sightings of the Yeti, and here is a photo that someone captured of it running away. I feel like that is solid proof of the Yeti existing. Whether it is what we think it is, a creature more like a human but very tall, hairy, and not as evolved, that is the question. Perhaps it is not what we think it is at all. Perhaps it has magical powers and that is how it has stayed disguised all of this time. Or perhaps he goes back into his own dimension from time to time. Who knows? In our number 1 spot we have fairies. If there is one mythical creature that I am personally obsessed with and would be very, very happy if it existed, it would be the fairy. All of my life I have been obsessed with the idea of them. In fact, all of my life people would say to me that I am very fairy-like. Of course they meant that my spirit reminds them of how movies have portrayed fairies, and so that's their understanding of what fairies are. Personally, I think it is very possible that fairies live among us, and most likely in Ireland. Did you know that it was once thought that the people of Atlantis came to Ireland as their continent was sinking, and so therefore some Irish people would be magical like the Atlanteans, and some believe that our idea of fairies are perhaps just these people that are from Atlantis. Very interesting thought. Perhaps they live in another dimension though, and that's why we can't see them. Or maybe they all went to a parallel universe. Honestly, we could wonder about this forever, and it is fun, but I suppose unless we develop a device that allows us to slip into other dimensions, then we will never really know. But it's sure fun to imagine.
What you're looking at here is a frog affected by the radiation of Chernobyl. In 2016, 2 Spanish researchers, Pablo Barraco and German Oriazola, were studying how life was bouncing back in Pripyat, and they noticed something strange: black frogs. Now obviously dark colored frogs on their own aren't unusual, but the type of frog they were looking at, Hyla orientalis, a tree frog native to the area, is usually bright green. So what happened? Well, it turns out it might be evolution caused by the radiation. The darker skin isn't random. These frogs have developed higher levels of melanin, the same pigment that protects human skin from UV damage. In this case, it helps block radiation from damaging the frog's cells, and it seems this shift happened fast. Within a few decades, a bright green species started turning dark to survive in a nuclear zone. It's one of the clearest examples of nature adapting. Instead of dying out, these frogs have adjusted their biology to deal with one of the harshest environments on the planet. This is Jeremy Wade, river monsters guy, pulling a massive catfish out of one of the cooling ponds near the Chernobyl power plant. These ponds are still radioactive. Wade mentioned the fish he caught had radiation levels about 16 times higher than normal. But what really grabs attention is the size of these things. They're huge. People have wondered if radiation is causing these fish to mutate and grow into monsters, but it may not be the radiation that's making them giants. It's more about the environment. These ponds are closed off, meaning the catfish are at the top of the food chain. No predators, tons of food, and people even feed them sometimes, so over time they just get bigger and bigger. They're living longer as well, which adds to their size. Now, that doesn't mean they're not being affected by the radiation. They're definitely soaking it in, and scientists are still studying whether there are long-term mutations or effects we can't see from the outside. Either way though, these catfish are a real reminder of how life can keep going in places where it really shouldn't. Wolves in Chernobyl aren't just Chernobyl exclusion zone, are basically radiation sponges. Out of the animals still hanging around, these guys are carrying some of the highest levels of radioactive material in their bodies, and it all comes down to what they eat. Boars dig through the soil looking for roots, insects, and mushrooms, especially deer truffles. And those truffles are loaded with radiation because the soil around Chernobyl is still contaminated. So the boars eat, and the radiation builds up inside them. Over time, it's had some nasty effects. People have reported sightings of boars with strange growths, tumors, physical deformities. It's not like they're growing extra legs or anything out of a comic book, but their bodies clearly aren't doing great. Radiation messes with their cells and weakens their immune systems, making them more likely to get sick or develop weird internal issues. But even still, they are surviving. Maybe not as well as the dogs or wolves, but they've managed to reproduce and live in this environment. Some are even leaving the exclusion zone and mixing with boar populations in other parts of Europe, which is kind of concerning. So this may not be a living thing, but considering it's a glob of radioactive goo, I mean, I don't know, maybe it is. It's known as the elephant's foot, one of the most famous concoctions to come out of the Chernobyl disaster. After Reactor 4 blew up, a bunch of nuclear fuel, metal and concrete fused together under the plant and cooled into this massive lump of radioactive material, and it kinda looked like a deformed elephant's foot. Thus it was dubbed the elephant's foot. When this thing was first formed, it was putting out so much radiation that standing near it for just a few minutes could kill you. Not exaggerating. People who had to go near it in the early days of cleanup would get a lethal dose of radiation in minutes. One guy who filmed it back in the 80s was reportedly dead within a year. Even now, decades later, it's still dangerous. The radiation has cooled down a bit, but not enough to really make it safe. Scientists have kept an eye on it over the years because they were worried it might keep leaking radiation or start heating up again. It's also affected the air, water, and soil around it. They call the elephant's foot a kind of man-made lava, except instead of burning you, it poisons you. And yeah, it's still sitting there, deep under Reactor 4, slowly decaying, but still very dangerous. After the Chernobyl disaster, a group of wild Przewalski's horses, an endangered species, was introduced into the exclusion zone in the late 90s. These horses actually started doing pretty well in the abandoned human-free landscape, but not everything was normal. Researchers noticed that some of the horses were being born with these strange physical defects, like shortened, scruffy manes and unusually stubby tails. The deformities weren't as extreme as some other animals, but there was still a lot of concern about whether radiation exposure had messed with the horse's development. Normally, Przewalski's horses have thick, upright manes and long tails, which help protect them from insects and the elements, but these Chernobyl ones looked rougher. There's still debate about whether the radiation is the direct cause or if it's more about poor nutrition in the contaminated environment, but either way, the odd physical changes were real. Not everything in Chernobyl shrank or mutated into weird broken shapes. some plants actually grew bigger. Certain species of moss, mushrooms, and ferns in the exclusion zone started showing signs of gigantism after the disaster. According to the Journal of Environmental Radioactivity, radiation seems to have messed with the genes that control how these plants grow. Instead of growing normally, some plants ended up with these oversized leaves or unusually thick stems. It's believed that the radiation disrupted the normal signals that tell plants when to stop growing, leading to these bizarre, almost monster-like versions. In some parts of the Red Forest, ferns grew much larger than expected, and certain mushrooms popped up freakishly big. Scientists think this is because mutations either removed natural growth limits or somehow activated dormant genetic traits. Of course, just because a plant is bigger though doesn't mean it's healthier. A lot of these oversized plants had heavy radioactive contamination. Research has shown that birds living in the most radioactive areas around Chernobyl had brains that were about 15% smaller than birds from clean areas. Researchers think that radiation exposure during development damaged cells in their brain, either killing them off or stopping them from forming properly. They found that younger birds had it worse than adults, meaning that radiation was having a serious effect during the earliest stages of life. And those birds with smaller brains, unsurprisingly, had lower survival rates. What you're looking at here is the only known photograph of a creature known as the blackbird of Chernobyl. In early April of 1986, people living around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant started reporting something strange. Witnesses described seeing this huge, dark creature, like a man, but without a head. It had massive wings and glowing red eyes. Locals started calling it the Blackbird of Chernobyl. Sightings of this thing kept piling up, right up until the morning of April 26th, when Reactor 4 exploded. That disaster unleashed a radioactive cloud that spread across parts of the Soviet Union, Europe, and North America. The area around Chernobyl was just devastated. Over 300,000 people had to evacuate, still considered the worst nuclear accident in human history. In the chaos after the explosion, though, Soviet helicopters dumped sand, lead, and other materials onto the burning reactor, trying to smother the fire. Firefighters, not realizing they were dealing with a radioactive inferno, rushed in, often without proper protection. A lot of them would die soon after the radiation poisoning, including Lieutenant Vladimir Pravik, who passed away just weeks later. But some of those firefighters who survived long enough to talk, well, they reported seeing this massive, dark, winged creature flying through the radioactive smoke above Reactor 4. After the meltdown, sightings of the Blackbird stopped completely. Some people believe that the Blackbird of Chernobyl was the same kind of entity as the Mothman, the creature seen in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, before the Silver Bridge collapsed in 1967. Both creatures had similar appearances, giant wings, red eyes, and in both cases, there were also reports of nightmares and strange, threatening phone calls before disaster struck. Another theory is that people might have actually been seeing a black stork, but the black stork only has a 6-foot wingspan, not 20. And that bird doesn't explain the terrifying dreams and phone calls that witnesses talked about. Whatever the blackbird really was, though, it hasn't been seen again since Chernobyl. Whether it's a warning, a bad omen, or just mass hysteria, no one really knows. But if it ever shows up again, history says something very bad might not be far behind.